So Flair's working at the time with a really bad neck. And I guess that makes sense why it's a 3-on-2. But at least that night when Snuka's there, I could see how if you're watching at home, you think, well, maybe Snuka's not going to round out their team, but he's going to be in their corner. But Meltzer would say he's not heard that was the case. Did you ever think Snuka would be there? Just based on the connection with both you and Rock?
You know what? I think I may have pitched the idea that Snuka should be in our corner and Bob Orton Jr. should be in theirs because now you got WrestleMania 1 and WrestleMania 20 because Snuka was the guy outside the ring. And wasn't it Bob Jr. who was outside? Because it was Roddy and Paul Orndorff, right? They were against Mr. T and Hulk.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
Orndorff.
so I thought it was a nice bookend. I believe I did suggest it, and it didn't happen.
So you're going to do the Hall of Fame ceremony, WrestleMania weekend, and present Don Morocco. Yeah. Man, this is just all over your MSG memory here, is it not?
Yeah.
Snuka right before, Morocco here for the Hall of Fame. This is very Foley.
And it was fun at that time because the presenters were sitting out almost like on a dais. And I remember sitting next to Shawn Michaels, and I always had a good friendship with Shawn. And I remember Jerry Briscoe is on Big John Studd's video package, and he goes, if I had to describe Big John Studd in one word, it would be big. I turned to Sean, I said, that was profound, right? So we were out there. I guess it's probably better visually if the presenter's only out there for a short time. But I was really honored to be asked. I don't think I was Morocco's choice, but I think at that time, you were kind of given somebody. I was lucky that when my number was called, I was given my choice, and Terry Funk gave a really great induction speech. At that time, I remember it, remember that fondly. Billy Graham was inducted, Big John Studd. Junkyard Dog was inducted posthumously, and, his daughter was there. It was great to be around the guys. We realized we've got something major to do the next day. It was really a great way to, it's almost like, your final meal before you walk that green mile.
What was the vibe that weekend with everybody knowing Goldberg and Lesnar are finishing up and not on the best of terms?
I don't think that soured anybody. I remember Brock apologizing to me, and I said, no, man, you have to go after your dreams. And he did. And then when he came back to wrestling, he was, he just asserted himself and made himself.
It worked out.
It worked out for everybody.
You're one of the top attractions on the show. You're in the 4th place on the card. How did that meet your expectation? Just given the idea that it's you and Rock and Ric Flair all in the same ring.
I thought we were the first match on the main card.
I think 4th overall is what we're doing. Overall,
okay. Conrad, I was just so scared, and I just wanted it to be over. It wasn't that classic Foley presentation and, getting up for it and peaking. If I could have had my wish and it would be over without me participating at all, if I could just blink my eyes and said, it's over and it was good. We did it. I just, I didn't have my mojo, which was odd because in building that storyline, I did have the mojo. And I was overwhelmed by the enormity of the moment. Again, it was Rock, it was Rick, and Randy was, young. Dave, he was new to the business and new to WWE. He had a few years on Randy, and I just felt overwhelmed and like I didn't belong there. Yeah, I don't want to overstate how disappointed I was in myself, but I was very disappointed.
What preparation went into putting the match together? We've heard at various times when Rock would come back, he's going to be putting in a lot of time in the ring with guys like Curtis Axel or what have you, just getting ready for a match like this. But this is a return match for you too. So are you guys going through stuff at a warehouse somewhere? Or?
No, just that day.
Okay.
And it's probably, probably too much stuff was set up. as we get into talking about the singles match with me and Randy, I'll talk more about that process. There was a lot of talk that went in, 2 sets of heat. I took a clothesline from Batista that affected my voice. So the next day I was doing some stuff for WWE, and you could tell I was really hoarse. Just it caught me a little bit high, a little higher than you'd like. And again, I can't tell you that much about the match because I've never watched it. I just know that Rock and Rick were electrifying, and that I curled up in a ball. And
well, let's talk about Rick for a minute, because we know that you guys are going to have an issue. It hasn't yet happened at that point, but you did say earlier, when I sort of guessed that maybe some of the folks who thought that you hurt Randy in the promo, that it was Triple H, and you said, well, Rick too. So could you tell, was there any sort of, I don't know if animosity is the right word, there's tension? Could you tell, like, we're not on the same page?
No, because the first time Evolution jumped me and beat me down, I was thinking Rick's going to give me a little retribution, for what I'd written in my book about him. That's where the hard feelings were. And he didn't. He was light as a feather. And I even joked around with him about that. And he made it clear that he business and personal, they don't, he's the consummate professional. And that young man I talked about, Marcos, he passed away very shortly after that, within a few days of that event at Penn State. And I had asked Vince if I could address the wrestlers. And Vince came on and he said, Mick Foley would like to talk to all of you. I know how busy all of you are on the road. Sometimes we forget about the difference that we are able to make in people's lives. And Mick would like to remind you about that. And here I go. I'm used to addressing, and would address later that night, 12 to 15,000, whatever the live crowd was, and be completely comfortable doing that. But now I'm among my peers.
It's different.
It's different. And it was one of the most difficult things I had to do. But what I wanted to do was thank each and every person who went out of their way to make one of his last days on earth one of his best days. The mom had asked me if I would be okay with him wearing the stuff that we had given him for his casket. I'd be okay. Like, wow, what an honor that is. And I remember I even dropped that rare F-bomb, because he was wearing Austin's shirt, F fear. And I remember saying, that's right, fuck fear. And it was unusual for me to drop that. And I remember Rick being very emotional, and that it was like, it was like it was a really emotional day. And I apologized to Rick for the way my book had made him feel. That would later go on to be a thing. It's like, I wasn't apologizing for what I wrote. I was apologizing that it had caused such bad feelings, which might seem like it's the same thing. But there were a lot of tears among the men and women, in that dressing room. And that was one of the most difficult things I felt like I had ever done. I'd just been at his funeral earlier that day, but I felt like everyone should know about the difference they'd made in that young man's life.
Absolutely.